Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Deception. Vincent Calloway stood in his corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a chessboard. At 52, he had built Calloway Enterprises from nothing, a construction empire that had reshaped half the metropolitan skyline. His hands, scarred from his early days swinging hammers and pouring concrete, now signed contracts worth millions. Those same hands had also built what he thought was a perfect marriage. 25 years ago, he'd met Claire Sutton at a charity gala. She was a psychology graduate student then, beautiful and sharp-minded, volunteering for a mental health nonprofit. Vincent was immediately captivated by her intelligence and the way she could read people like open books. She seemed to see straight through his rough exterior to the ambitious man beneath. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Vincent was climbing the ladder of success, working 18-hour days, but Claire never complained. She supported his dreams, even when it meant eating ramen for months while he invested every penny into his first major project. When his business finally took off, Vincent made sure Claire never wanted for anything again. Bradley Calloway, Vincent's younger brother, had always been the family disappointment. Where Vincent was disciplined and driven, Bradley was charming but reckless. He'd burned through 3 marriages, countless jobs, and most of his inheritance from their parents. Vincent had bailed him out more times than he could count, always hoping his brother would finally straighten out. 6 months ago, Vincent had made what he now realized was his biggest mistake. He'd given Bradley a job as project coordinator at Calloway Enterprises. Claire had actually suggested it during one of their dinner conversations. Maybe having real responsibility will change him, she'd said, her hand touching Vincent's arm gently. Family is everything, Vince. Give him another chance. Vincent should have trusted his instincts. Bradley had been a mediocre employee at best, but Claire had continued to advocate for him, always finding excuses for his poor performance. Vincent had attributed her sympathy to her psychology background. She always believed people could change. Now, as Vincent prepared to leave the office for their anniversary dinner, he felt a strange unease. For weeks, Claire had been different, distant, secretive, taking calls in other rooms. When he questioned her about it, she blamed stress from planning their anniversary celebration. "I want a night to be perfect," she'd said that morning, kissing his cheek before he left for work. "I have a surprise that will change everything." Vincent straightened his tie and grabbed his keys. In a few hours, they'd be at Moretti's, the same restaurant where he'd proposed 26 years ago. Claire had insisted on the same private dining room, the same menu they'd shared that magical night. As he walked to his car, Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Bradley. "Looking forward to tonight, brother. Time for truth." Vincent frowned. Bradley wasn't supposed to be at dinner. It was just the two of them. He started to call his brother, then decided against it. Maybe Bradley was just referring to some family gathering later in the weekend. But something in that message felt ominous. Vincent drove through the city streets, passing construction sites bearing his company's logo. Each project represented years of sacrifice, strategic planning, and ruthless execution. He learned early that success required crushing weakness in himself and others. It was a lesson that had served him well in business. He had no idea he was about to learn how well it would serve him in life. Chapter 2. The Perfect Storm. Moretti's hadn't changed in 26 years. The same dim lighting, the same burgundy wallpaper, the same elderly maitre d' who remembered Vincent's proposal and always greeted them with knowing smiles. Tonight, Giuseppe led them to their private dining room with extra flourish. 25 years, the old man said in his thick accent. Molto bello. Very beautiful. Claire looked stunning in a black dress Vincent had never seen before. Her auburn hair was styled differently, more sophisticated, and she wore new jewelry that caught the candlelight. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her purse, and checking her phone repeatedly. "You look incredible," Vincent said, pulling out her chair. "New dress. I wanted tonight to be special." Claire's smile seemed forced. We've come so far, haven't we? They ordered the same meal from 26 years ago. Osso buco for him, salmon for her. Vincent tried to recreate the romance of their early days, sharing memories of their wedding, their struggles, their triumphs. But Claire seemed distracted, her responses mechanical. Remember when we lived in that tiny apartment above the deli? Vincent laughed. You said the smell of salami would be our fortune cookie. It would tell us when we'd made it in life. Things change, Claire said quietly. People change. Vincent studied his wife's face. As a businessman, he learned to read micro-expressions, to catch the tells that revealed when someone was lying or hiding something. Claire was definitely hiding something. Are you all right? You've seemed distant lately. Claire's hand went to her purse again. Actually, Vincent, I need to tell you something. I have a surprise. She pulled out a small wrapped box, placing it on the table between them. Vincent felt a moment of confusion. They'd never exchanged gifts on their anniversary. That had always been a tradition they'd save for birthdays and Christmas. Open it, Claire said, her voice strange, almost cold. Vincent unwrapped the box slowly. Inside, beneath tissue paper, were official legal documents. His eyes scanned the header. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce papers. But that wasn't the worst part. Beneath the papers was a photograph. Claire and Bradley, clearly intimate, kissing outside what looked like a hotel. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 days ago. Vincent's blood turned to ice. The restaurant's sounds faded to a distant hum. He looked up at Claire, who was no longer pretending to be nervous. Her expression had transformed into something he'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost predatory. We've been waiting for this moment for a long time, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 25 years was long enough to play the perfect wife. The private dining room door opened, and Bradley walked in, wearing a suit Vincent had bought him last Christmas. His brother's face wore the same cold expression as Claire's. Surprised, big brother? Bradley sat down uninvited. Took you long enough to figure it out. Vincent's mind raced. Questions flooded his thoughts, but one stood out above the rest. How long had this been going on? How long? He asked, his voice deadly quiet. Claire and Bradley exchanged a look, and Claire smiled, a cruel expression Vincent had never seen on her face before. Since the beginning, she said. Since before we were married. The words hit Vincent like a physical blow. 25 years. Their entire marriage had been a lie. You see, Vince, Bradley continued, Claire and I met first. At that charity gala. But you were the one with the money, the ambition. I was just a college dropout with no prospects. So we made a plan, Claire added. I'd marry you, help build your empire, and when the time was right, we'd take our share and disappear. Vincent's hands clenched into fists under the table. His mind, trained by decades of business warfare, began to shift from shock to something much more dangerous. You want a divorce, he said calmly. Fine, but you won't get a penny. Bradley laughed. Actually, brother, Claire's been very smart about this. Illinois is a no-fault state, and she's entitled to half of everything you've built, including the company. Our lawyers have been preparing for months, Claire added. We have documentation of our contributions to your success, evidence of assets, everything we need. Vincent stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. Both Claire and Bradley tensed, perhaps remembering that Vincent had learned to fight long before he'd learned to negotiate. But Vincent simply reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and made a call. Antonio, it's Vincent. I need you at Moretti's. Private dining room. Now. He hung up and looked at his wife and brother with an expression that made both of them suddenly uncomfortable. You want to play games? Vincent said quietly. You have no idea who you're playing with. Chapter 3. The Call to War. Antonio Ricci arrived within the hour, his presence filling the private dining room like a storm cloud. Vincent's lawyer for the past 15 years, Antonio was known throughout the legal community as a man who didn't just win cases. He obliterated opponents. Tall and silver-haired, with the bearing of a general, he commanded respect from judges and fear from opposing counsel. Claire and Bradley had grown visibly uncomfortable during the wait. Vincent had said nothing, simply sitting in silence, his mind working through possibilities and contingencies. They'd clearly expected tears, begging, perhaps rage. Instead, they got calculated stillness. "Vincent," Antonio said, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. "I came as soon as I could. Sit down, old friend. My wife has something she'd like to share with you." Claire's confidence had begun to crack. She slid the divorce papers across the table to Antonio, who reviewed them with professional detachment. His eyebrows raised slightly as he read. "Interesting," Antonio murmured. "Very aggressive terms. And filed in Cook County, I see." He looked up at Claire. "Who's your attorney, Mrs. Calloway?" "Wilson, Park and Associates," Claire replied, trying to maintain her composure. Antonio smiled, an expression that had made many lawyers rethink their career choices. "Ah, yes. Marcus Wilson. Good lawyer. Not great, but good." He turned to Vincent. "This is recoverable, is it?" Vincent asked quietly. "Of course. Prenuptial agreement, business protections, asset structures we put in place years ago. Mrs. Calloway might get some settlement, but nothing like what she's hoping for." Claire's face flushed. "The prenup was signed under duress. I was young, naive." "You were 28 with a master's degree in psychology," Antonio interrupted. "That's not going to fly." Bradley leaned forward. "You don't understand. We have evidence." "Of what?" Antonio's voice was steel. "An affair? Illinois is no fault. Adultery doesn't affect division of assets unless there's economic waste, which you'd have to prove." Vincent watched his wife and brother's confidence crumble as Antonio dismantled their plan piece by piece. But this was just the beginning. They'd shown their hand, revealed their true nature. Now it was time to show them his. "Antonio," Vincent said calmly, "I want you to do something for me. First thing tomorrow morning, I want Bradley removed from the company. Security escort, the works. And I want a forensic accountant to examine every transaction he's had access to." "Vincent," Bradley said, sweat beading on his forehead, "you can't just—" "Can't what? Fire an employee for cause? This is my company, Bradley. I built it. I own it." Vincent's voice never rose above conversational level, which made it somehow more terrifying. "And I want to know exactly what you've been doing with company resources." Claire grabbed Bradley's hand. "We haven't stolen anything." "Haven't you?" Vincent stood up slowly. "Company credit cards, expense accounts, business trips. I'm going to examine every charge, every receipt, every hotel room." He paused, "including the hotel where this photo was taken." The implication was clear. If they'd used company resources for their affair, it constituted theft and breach of fiduciary duty. "This is harassment," Claire said, but her voice lacked conviction. Vincent pulled out his phone again and made another call. "Detective Morrison?" "Vincent Calloway. I need to file a report tomorrow morning. Suspected embezzlement and fraud." "Yes, I'll have documentation." He hung up and looked at the two people who had just destroyed his world. "You wanted to play hardball. Let's play." Antonio gathered the divorce papers. "I'll have a response filed by the end of the week. In the meantime, Vincent, you might want to consider securing your assets." "Already done," Vincent replied. "As of this morning, the house, the cars, the bank accounts, everything is locked down pending investigation." Claire stood up suddenly. "You can't do that. I live there too." "Read your prenup again, Claire. Infidelity voids your claim to marital residence." Vincent's smile was razor thin. "You and Bradley are welcome to find a hotel. I'm sure you know some good ones." As they prepared to leave, Vincent called out one last time. "Oh, and Claire, that psychology degree, you're going to need it. Because by the time I'm finished with you both, you're going to understand exactly what happens when you try to destroy Vincent Calloway." The door closed behind them, leaving Vincent alone with Antonio. "How bad is it really?" Vincent asked. "Legally, you'll be fine. She'll get something, but nowhere near half. The prenup is solid." Antonio paused. "But Vincent, if you're planning what I think you're planning, be careful. Don't let anger make you do something stupid." Vincent walked to the window, looking out at the city he'd helped build. "Antonio, you've known me for 15 years. Have you ever seen me do anything stupid?" "No, but I've never seen you betrayed like this either." Vincent turned back to his lawyer, and Antonio saw something in his eyes that made him step back. It wasn't anger. It was something much more dangerous. It was the cold, calculating fury of a man who had built an empire through ruthless precision and was now going to apply those same skills to destroying the people who had betrayed him. "Don't worry about me doing anything stupid," Vincent said quietly. "Worry about what happens when I do everything smart." Chapter 4. Gathering Intelligence. Vincent spent the next morning in his office, making calls and pulling threads. By noon, he had assembled a team that would have made a military intelligence unit envious. 3 private investigators, a forensic accountant, a computer security specialist, and a team of lawyers who specialized in high-conflict divorce cases. The first revelation came within hours. "Mr. Calloway," said Diana Frost, the lead private investigator, "we've traced the affair back at least 3 years based on hotel records and credit card receipts. But there's more." She slid a folder across his desk. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and communication records that painted a picture of betrayal far worse than Vincent had imagined. "Your brother has been skimming from project accounts for 2 years. Small amounts, never enough to trigger audits, but it adds up to about $80,000. Vincent's jaw tightened. "And Claire? She's been planning this divorce for at least 18 months. We found communications with her lawyer dating back that far. There are also records of her moving money into private accounts, jewelry purchases she's hidden, even a safety deposit box she opened without your knowledge." The computer specialist, a young woman named Riley Chun, looked up from her laptop. "Their electronic communications are extensive. Text messages, emails, even recorded phone calls. They've been incredibly detailed about their plans." "Show me." Riley turned her laptop screen toward Vincent. The messages between Claire and Bradley were damning. Not just proof of the affair, but evidence of calculated planning to maximize the divorce settlement and minimize Vincent's ability to fight back. One message from Claire to Bradley stood out. "V is so predictable. He thinks everyone plays by his rules. When we're done, he'll understand that being honorable is just being weak." Vincent read through months of messages, each one a knife twist. They mocked his devotion, laughed about his long work hours, even joked about how easy it was to manipulate him. But then Vincent found something that changed everything. "Riley, what's this message thread from 8 months ago?" Riley clicked on the folder. It looks like they were discussing someone else. "Look at the contact name, insurance policy." The messages revealed a third conspirator, Claire's sister, Denise, who worked as a paralegal at a major law firm. She had been feeding Claire insider information about high-profile divorces, helping her plan strategies to maximize her settlement. "This is conspiracy," Vincent said quietly. "They've been planning this for years, using inside legal information to build their case." Diana nodded. "It gets worse. We found evidence that Denise has been doing this with other clients. Your wife wasn't her first victim." Vincent stood up and walked to his window. The city spread out below him, and he could see several construction sites bearing his company's logo. Each one represented years of careful planning, strategic thinking, and precise execution. Now he would apply those same skills to war. "Diana, I want you to expand the investigation. I want to know everything about all 3 of them: financial records, personal relationships, vulnerabilities, fears, everything." "Mr. Calloway," Diana said carefully, "what exactly are you planning?" Vincent turned back to his team. "They think they know me. They think I'm just a hardworking businessman who plays by the rules. They're about to learn that I didn't build this empire by being nice." His phone rang. It was Antonio. "Vincent, we have a problem." Claire's attorney filed an emergency motion for temporary support and exclusive use of the marital residence. "The hearing is tomorrow morning." "Let them come," Vincent said. "By tomorrow morning, I'll have everything I need." After hanging up, Vincent made one more call to a number he hadn't used in 15 years, but had never forgotten. "Tommy? It's Vincent Calloway." "Yes, it's been a long time. I need a favor. The kind we used to do back in the neighborhood before I got respectable." The voice on the other end was gravelly, amused. "Vinny, what kind of trouble you got yourself into?" "The kind that requires someone to forget how to be a gentleman." "Well, shit. I thought you'd gone all corporate on us. What do you need?" Vincent looked at the files spread across his desk. evidence of years of betrayal and manipulation. I need to remind some people that successful doesn't mean soft. Consider done, just like old times. As Vincent hung up, he realized that for the first time in days, he was smiling. Claire and Bradley thought they were dealing with a wealthy businessman bound by social conventions and legal niceties. They were about to meet the man who had crawled out of a Chicago slum and built an empire by being smarter, tougher, and more ruthless than anyone who tried to stand in his way. The war was just beginning. Chapter 5. The First Strike. The emergency hearing convened at 9 a.m. sharp in Judge Patricia Henley's courtroom. Claire sat with her attorney, Marcus Wilson, looking confident and composed. She wore a conservative navy suit that projected the image of a wronged wife seeking justice. Vincent sat with Antonio, appearing calm and professional. But inside, he was a loaded weapon waiting to fire. Judge Henley reviewed the motion. Mrs. Calloway is seeking temporary spousal support of $15,000 per month and exclusive use of the marital residence during these proceedings. Mr. Wilson, present your case. Wilson stood up, painted a picture of Claire as a devoted wife who had sacrificed her career to support her husband's success. Your Honor, Mrs. Calloway has been married for 25 years. She gave up her career in psychology to support Mr. Calloway's business endeavors. She's entitled to maintain the standard of living she's accustomed to, and the exclusive use of the residence. Judge Henley asked, Mrs. Calloway fears for her safety, Your Honor. Mr. Calloway has a history of violent behavior and has made threats. Vincent's eyes narrowed. This was a lie, and a dangerous one. Mr. Ricci? Judge Henley looked to Antonio. Antonio stood with predatory grace. Your Honor, if I may. He activated a laptop, and a screen descended from the ceiling. The plaintiff has made serious allegations about my client's character. I'd like to address those first. The screen lit up with a series of photographs. Vincent at charity events, receiving community service awards, coaching Little League Baseball for underprivileged kids. The images painted a picture of a man deeply involved in community service and philanthropy. This is the man Mrs. Calloway claims she fears, Antonio said. A man who has donated millions to charity, who personally mentored over 50 at-risk youth, who has never been arrested, never been charged with any crime, never even had a parking ticket. Wilson objected. Character evidence isn't relevant to the motion at hand. Oh, but it is, Antonio continued smoothly, because Mrs. Calloway's attorney just made character the central issue by claiming she fears for her safety. The screen changed to show a timeline. Now, let's discuss why Mrs. Calloway might really want exclusive use of the residence. The new images showed bank records, jewelry receipts, and storage unit rental agreements. Over the past 18 months, Mrs. Calloway has been systematically removing assets from the marital home. Jewelry, artwork, personal items, all moved to a private storage facility she rented under her maiden name. Claire's face went pale. Wilson started to stand, but Antonio wasn't finished. She's also been moving money, Your Honor. Small amounts, never enough to trigger automatic notifications, but totaling over $200,000 moved to accounts in her name only. The screen showed a flowchart of financial transactions. Judge Henley leaned forward, studying the documents. Furthermore, Antonio continued, Mrs. Calloway has not been honest about the timeline of these proceedings. She claims this is a recent decision, but we have evidence that she's been planning this divorce for over 18 months. Wilson finally found his voice. Your Honor, these allegations are supported by documentary evidence, Antonio interrupted, including communications between Mrs. Calloway and her attorney dating back to August of last year. Judge Henley looked at Wilson sharply. Counselor, did you begin representing Mrs. Calloway 18 months ago? Wilson's silence was damning. But the most relevant issue, Antonio said, is why Mrs. Calloway really wants exclusive use of the residence. The screen changed again, showing hotel receipts and credit card statements. Mrs. Calloway has been conducting an extramarital affair with Mr. Calloway's brother, Bradley Calloway, using marital assets to fund their relationship. The courtroom erupted. Claire grabbed Wilson's arm, whispering frantically, Vincent watched his wife's composure finally crack. "Your Honor," Antonio said over the noise, "Mrs. Calloway doesn't want the house for safety. She wants it because she and her lover have been using it for their affair, and she believes she can claim it as an asset in the divorce." Judge Henley banged her gavel. "Order." She looked at Wilson. "Counselor, do you have a response to these allegations?" Wilson stood slowly. Vincent could see the man realizing his client had lied to him about crucial facts. "Your Honor, we need time to review these documents and prepare a response." "I'll bet you do," Judge Henley said dryly. She turned to Antonio. "Mr. Ricci, what is your client seeking?" "Simply this, Your Honor, that the status quo be maintained pending a full investigation. Mr. Calloway will continue to live in the marital residence. Mrs. Calloway is welcome to return, but if she chooses not to, she can make other arrangements. As for support, we believe the evidence shows Mrs. Calloway has been preparing for this eventuality for months and has adequate resources." Judge Henley reviewed her notes. "Motion for exclusive use of residence is denied. Motion for temporary support is denied, pending a full accounting of assets and a proper investigation. Mrs. Calloway, I strongly suggest you and your attorney have a very honest conversation about the facts of this case." As the court adjourned, Claire turned to Vincent with fury in her eyes. "You bastard," she hissed. "You think you've won?" Vincent stood up slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. "Claire, this wasn't winning. This was just me being polite." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have no idea what losing looks like yet." Outside the courthouse, Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Diana Frost. "Package delivered. Phase 2 is ready." Vincent smiled as he watched Claire and Wilson hurry away, probably to figure out how much their case had just fallen apart. They thought the courtroom was the battlefield. They were about to learn that Vincent Calloway fought wars on multiple fronts. Chapter 6. The Web Titans. That evening, Claire arrived at the small apartment she'd rented under her maiden name to find Bradley pacing frantically. The space was a far cry from the luxury they'd both grown accustomed to, a cramped two-bedroom in a complex that had seen better decades. "Did you see the news?" Bradley asked without preamble. Claire dropped her purse and stared at him. "What news?" Bradley pointed to his laptop, where a local business publication's website was displayed. The headline read, "Calloway Enterprises employee arrested for embezzlement." Claire's blood went cold as she read the article. Bradley had been arrested that afternoon and charged with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. The article detailed how a routine internal audit had uncovered systematic theft of company funds over a 2-year period. "They arrested me at the office," Bradley said, his voice shaking. "In front of everyone. Security escort, handcuffs, the whole thing. How is that possible? We were careful. Vincent's smarter than we thought. He had forensic accountants go through every transaction I've ever made. Every dinner, every hotel room, every gift I bought you. If it was paid for with company money, they found it." Claire sank into a chair, the magnitude of their situation beginning to hit her. "What did your lawyer say?" "That's the worst part." "My lawyer? The one from Wilson's firm? He can't represent me anymore." "Conflict of interest, since the firm is representing you in the divorce. So get another lawyer." "With what money?" Bradley's voice rose. "They've frozen all my accounts pending investigation. Every penny I have access to is company money they're claiming I stole." Claire's phone rang. The caller ID showed her sister's number. "Denise?" "Thank God." "Claire, we need to talk." "Now." "Are you alone?" "I'm with Bradley." "Put me on speaker." Claire hit the speaker button, and Denise's voice filled the small apartment, tight with panic. "They know about me," Denise said without preamble. "Vincent's people. They know I've been feeding you information." "How is that possible?" "They have our communications, Claire. All of them. Text messages, emails, even recorded phone calls. They know about the other cases too. They found out I've been doing this with other clients." Bradley slumped against the wall. "Jesus Christ." "It gets worse," Denise continued. "They've reported me to the state bar. I'm probably going to be disbarred. And my firm? They fired me this afternoon." Claire felt the walls closing in. "Denise, you need to—" "I need to what? Run? Hide? They have everything, Claire." Every document I copied, every strategy one shared, every law I broke helping you. Her voice cracked. I'm probably going to prison. The line went dead. Claire and Bradley stared at each other in the sudden silence. Everything was falling apart faster than they could process. Bradley's phone buzzed with a text message. He looked at it and went pale. What is it? Claire asked. It's from Vincent. Bradley read aloud. Check your email. Bradley opened his laptop and accessed his personal email. The message from Vincent was simple. Click the link. Against his better judgment, Bradley clicked. A video began playing, security camera footage from various hotels, restaurants, and even the Callaway Enterprises office. It showed Bradley and Claire together in clearly intimate situations over the past 3 years. Dates, times, and locations were meticulously documented. But the worst part was the audio. Conversations they'd had, mocking Vincent, discussing their plans, laughing about how easy he was to manipulate. He's been recording everything, Claire whispered. For years. The video ended with a simple message. This is what justice looks like. You played a game with a man who built an empire. Did you really think you could win? Bradley's phone rang. Vincent's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Claire said. Bradley put the phone on speaker. Vincent, hello, brother. Vincent's voice was calm, almost conversational. I thought you might want to know what happens next. Vincent, please. Bradley, you stole from my company. That's a felony. Multiple felonies. Actually, you're looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. I'll pay it back. With what money? You don't have any money. You never did. Everything you've had for the past 2 years has been stolen from me. Claire grabbed the phone. Vincent, we can work this out. Can we, Claire? You've been lying to me for 25 years. You've stolen from our marriage, betrayed our vows, and conspired with my brother to destroy everything I've built. His voice never changed tone, which made it somehow more terrifying. What exactly do you think we can work out? The divorce. The divorce is going to be very simple. You're going to get exactly what you're legally entitled to under our prenuptial agreement, which, thanks to your infidelity and the evidence of your systematic deception, is almost nothing. Bradley, try one more time. Vincent, we're family. No, Bradley. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't spend years planning to destroy each other. There was a pause. You want to know what family does? Family protects itself from people like you. The call ended. Claire and Bradley sat in stunned silence as the reality of their situation sank in. They had tried to outmaneuver a man who had spent 30 years building an empire through strategic thinking and ruthless execution. And they were losing. Badly. Chapter 7. The Hammer Falls. 3 weeks later, Claire sat in Marcus Wilson's office, watching her lawyer review documents with increasingly grim expressions. The confident attorney who had assured her of a substantial settlement now looked like a man who'd been hit by a truck. Claire, I'm going to be very direct with you, Wilson said. Your case has collapsed entirely. What do you mean collapsed? Wilson spread documents across his desk. The evidence Vincent's team has compiled is devastating. Not only do they have proof of your affair, but they've documented systematic deception going back to the beginning of your marriage. He pointed to a thick folder. They found the original correspondence between you and Bradley from before your wedding. Love letters, Claire. You were planning to marry Vincent for his money while continuing your relationship with his brother. Claire's face went white. She'd forgotten about those letters, stored in an old box in her mother's attic. They also have bank records showing you've been moving money for over 2 years, hidden jewelry purchases, even a safe deposit box you opened in another state. Wilson's voice was flat. And then there's the conspiracy with your sister. Denise is facing criminal charges, Wilson continued. She's cooperating with prosecutors to avoid prison time. That means she's going to testify about everything, every strategy she gave you, every law she broke to help you. Claire slumped in her chair. What does this mean for the divorce? Under your prenuptial agreement, infidelity voids most of your claims to marital property. Combined with the evidence of deception and theft, you're looking at a settlement of maybe $50,000, enough to start over, but nowhere near the millions you were hoping for. That's impossible. I gave him 25 years of my life. You gave him 25 years of lies, Wilson interrupted. Claire, I've been practicing family law for 20 years. I've never seen a case this thoroughly documented. Vincent's team has evidence of everything, every lie, every deception, every moment of betrayal. Wilson's phone rang. He answered it briefly, then hung up with a grim expression. That was the prosecutor's office. They want to meet with you tomorrow. Why? Because you're being charged as an accessory in Bradley's embezzlement case. Using stolen company funds to conduct an affair makes you a co-conspirator. Claire felt the world spinning around her. This is insane. Vincent can't destroy my entire life over an affair. He's not destroying your life over an affair, Wilson said quietly. He's destroying your life over 25 years of systematic fraud, deception, and theft. The affair was just the trigger that made him look deeper. Meanwhile, across town, Bradley Calloway sat in a much smaller office with a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Calloway, the evidence against you is overwhelming, the lawyer said. We're talking about documented theft of over $80,000, using company credit cards for personal expenses, falsifying expense reports. The list goes on. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Bradley said. Vincent always had everything. I just wanted my share. Your share wasn't yours to take. And the prosecutor isn't just looking at the money. They're treating this as part of a larger conspiracy involving your affair with your brother's wife. Bradley's head snapped up. What? They're arguing that the embezzlement was part of a larger scheme to defraud your brother, including your affair with his wife using stolen funds. That elevates this from simple theft to organized conspiracy. How much time am I looking at? If convicted on all counts, 7 to 12 years. Bradley felt his world collapse completely. 7 to 12 years in prison for what had started as just taking what he felt he deserved. There is one option, the lawyer continued. The prosecutor is willing to consider a plea deal if you cooperate fully. Provide testimony about the entire conspiracy, including your sister-in-law's involvement. You want me to testify against Claire? I want you to consider that she's probably going to testify against you to save herself. This isn't about loyalty anymore, Mr. Calloway. It's about survival. That evening, Vincent stood in his office, looking out at the city skyline. Diana Frost sat across from his desk, providing the day's updates. Both of them are cracking, Diana reported. Claire's lawyer is pushing for a quick settlement, and Bradley's public defender is talking plea deal. And Denise, fully cooperating. She'll testify about the entire conspiracy in exchange for probation instead of prison time. Vincent nodded. Everything was proceeding exactly as he'd planned. But the real satisfaction wasn't in their legal troubles. It was in watching them turn on each other. Any word from Claire? She's been trying to reach you all week. Calls, texts, even showed up at the office yesterday. What does she want? To talk. To work something out. She's desperate. Vincent smiled, a cold expression that would have made his enemies shiver. Let her be desperate a little longer. Desperation makes people show their true nature. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Vincent, please. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Vincent deleted the message without responding. Claire had spent 25 years deceiving him. Now she would learn what it felt like to be powerless, to have her entire world controlled by someone else's decisions. The game was almost over, and Vincent had won every round. Chapter 8, The Final Gambit. Claire's desperation had reached a breaking point. After 3 weeks of watching her life disintegrate, she made a decision that would prove to be her final mistake. She drove to Vincent's office building and waited in the parking garage until she saw his car arrive. As Vincent walked toward the elevator, Claire stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Vincent, please. Just 5 minutes. Vincent stopped and studied his wife of 25 years. She looked haggard, her expensive clothes wrinkled, her makeup imperfect. For a moment, he almost felt pity. Almost. 5 minutes, he said. They rode the elevator to his office in silence. Once inside, Claire turned to him with tears in her eyes. Tears Vincent now knew were likely as calculated as everything else about her. Vincent, I know you hate me. I know you think I'm a monster. But we had good times, didn't we? 25 years can't all have been a lie. Vincent walked to his desk, but didn't sit down. Which part wasn't a lie, Claire? The wedding vows you made while planning to continue your affair with my brother? The nights you held me while texting him? The times you said you loved me while stealing my money? Not everything was planned. I did love you in my own way. Your own way. Vincent's voice was quietly dangerous. Your own way involved 25 years of systematic deception. Your own way involved conspiracy and theft. Your own way involved mocking me behind my back with my own brother. Claire tried a different approach. What about forgiveness? What about mercy? You used to believe in second chances. I gave Bradley second chances, third chances, fourth chances. I gave him a job, money, a life. And you both used my generosity to plot against me. We can start over. You and me. Without Bradley. I'll sign any agreement you want, take any settlement. We can rebuild. Vincent finally sat down behind his desk. Claire, do you know what the difference is between a wise man and a fool? Claire shook her head. A wise man learns from his mistakes. A fool makes the same mistake twice. Vincent's eyes were cold. I would have to be the greatest fool in history to trust you again. Claire's facade finally cracked completely. You bastard. You self-righteous son of a bitch. You think you're so perfect? You think you never made mistakes. I made one mistake, Vincent said quietly. I trusted you. I gave you the best years of my life. You gave me 25 years of lies. There's a difference. Claire's desperation turned to rage. You want to destroy me? Fine. But you'll never have what we had. You'll never trust anyone again. You'll die alone, you miserable. Get out. The quiet words cut through Claire's tirade like a blade. Vincent's voice hadn't risen, but there was something in it that made Claire step back. Vincent, get out of my office. Get out of my building. And if you ever try to contact me again outside of legal proceedings, I'll have you arrested for harassment. Claire stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Vincent sat alone in his office for several minutes, then picked up his phone and called Diana Frost. She just left. Did you get it? Every word, Diana replied. The recording is crystal clear. Her threats, her admission that the good times were calculated, all of it. And Bradley, he just signed the plea agreement. Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'll testify against both Claire and Denise. Vincent nodded. The last pieces were falling into place. That evening, Claire returned to her apartment to find Bradley waiting for her, looking defeated. They offer me a deal, he said without preamble. What kind of deal? 7 years if I cooperate. 12 to 15 if I don't. Claire stared at him. Cooperate how? Testify. About everything. The affair, the planning, your sister's involvement, all of it. You can't. We're in this together. Are we? Bradley's voice was bitter. Because according to my lawyer, you've been trying to make your own deal for weeks. Claire's silence was damning. I'm taking the deal. Claire, 7 years is better than 15. You're going to testify against me? You were going to testify against me. Bradley exploded. Don't pretend this is about loyalty. We both know you'd throw me under the bus in a heartbeat if it saved you. They stared at each other, and in that moment, both realized that their conspiracy had been built on the same foundation as their affair. Mutual selfishness rather than any real connection. Vincent was right about one thing, Bradley said quietly. We never loved each other. We just hated him having what we wanted. The next morning, Vincent received a call from Antonio with the news he'd been expecting. Claire's attorney just called. She wants to accept the settlement offer. All of it. Every term. $50,000. No claim to the house or business. No spousal support. She's also agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for probation. Vincent hung up and walked to his window. In 6 months, it would all be over. Claire would be out of his life forever. Bradley would be in prison, and Denise would be disbarred and facing her own legal consequences. But as Vincent looked out at the city he'd helped build, he realized the victory felt different than he'd expected. Not hollow. He had no regrets about destroying people who had tried to destroy him, but it was tinged with a sadness he hadn't anticipated. 25 years of his life had been a lie. That was the part that truly hurt. Not the betrayal itself, but the realization that he'd never really known the woman he'd slept beside for a quarter century. But Vincent Calloway had not built an empire by dwelling on disappointments. He'd built it by learning from mistakes and moving forward. And he had learned. He'd learned that trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. He'd learned that mercy was often mistaken for weakness. And he'd learned that sometimes the people closest to you were the ones most capable of destroying you. Those were lessons he would never forget. Chapter 9. Empire's End. 6 months later, Vincent stood in the same courtroom where this had all begun, watching Judge Henley finalize the divorce decree. Claire sat at the defendant's table, wearing a simple black dress that looked like it came from a discount store. The transformation was complete, from the elegant woman who had once commanded rooms to someone broken and defeated. The court hereby grants the dissolution of marriage between Vincent Calloway and Claire Sutton Calloway, Judge Henley announced. All terms of the settlement agreement are hereby ratified. It was over. 25 years reduced to a legal document and a $50,000 check. As the courtroom emptied, Claire approached Vincent one last time. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she waved him away. "Vincent," she said quietly. He turned to face her, noting how much she'd aged in the past 6 months. The stress of legal proceedings, financial ruin, and public humiliation had taken their toll. "I just wanted to say," she began, then stopped, seeming to realize there was nothing left to say. "Goodbye, Claire," Vincent said simply. She nodded and walked away. Vincent watched her leave, then turned to Antonio. That's it. She's out of your life, forever." Outside the courthouse, Diana Frost was waiting with a final report. "Bradley was sentenced this morning," she said. 7 years, just as the plea agreement specified. He'll be eligible for parole in 5. And Denise, disbarred and 2 years probation. She'll never practice law again. Vincent nodded. Justice had been served completely and thoroughly. What about Claire's plans? She's leaving Chicago. Apparently, she has a cousin in Oregon who offered her a job as a secretary. It's quite a come down from being the wife of Vincent Calloway. Vincent felt no satisfaction in that information. The woman who had left the courthouse wasn't the same person he'd married 25 years ago. Or maybe she was, and he'd simply never seen her clearly. "Diana, I want you to keep tabs on all 3 of them. Quarterly reports. I want to know if any of them ever try to contact me, write about me, or mention my name in any public forum. You think they'll try something? I think desperate people do desperate things. And I believe in being prepared." That evening, Vincent sat in his study at home, a house that felt both familiar and entirely different without Claire's presence. He'd had the locks changed, the security system upgraded, and her belongings removed. It was his space again, but it felt somehow hollow. His phone rang. The caller ID showed the name Tommy Benedetto, the man from his old neighborhood he'd called months ago. "Vinny? It's Tommy. Just wanted to check in, see how things went." "It's over, Tommy. All of it. Good. Any loose ends need tying up?" Vincent considered the question. There were always loose ends, people who might cause problems in the future, opportunities for revenge that hadn't been fully explored. But sometimes enough was enough. "No, they're finished. That's sufficient. You sure? Because if you ever need anything." "I'm sure. But Tommy, thank you for being ready. Anytime, Vinny. That's what family's for." Real family, Vincent thought as he hung up. Not the kind that betrays you, but the kind that stands ready to help when the world turns against you. Over the following months, Vincent threw himself back into his business with renewed focus. Calloway Enterprises expanded into new markets, acquired smaller competitors, and landed several major government contracts. Vincent's reputation in the business community, far from being damaged by the divorce scandal, seemed enhanced by his decisive handling of it. But the personal cost was real. Vincent found himself unable to trust easily, suspicious of motives, constantly analyzing people for signs of deception. He dated occasionally, but never seriously, always wondering what agenda lay behind every smile, every laugh, every expression of interest. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Vincent received an unexpected visitor. Antonio called ahead to warn him. "Vincent, there's someone here to see you. Someone from your past." "Who?" "Father Miguel Rodriguez. He says he knew you growing up." Vincent smiled for the first time in weeks. Father Miguel had been the priest at his childhood parish, the man who'd taught him that strength without moral purpose was just brutality. Send him up. Father Miguel looked older, but still carried himself with a quiet dignity Vincent remembered. They embraced, and Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in months, a sense of genuine connection with another human being. Vincent, my boy, I heard about your troubles. Not troubles, Father. Education. The old priest smiled. Ah, still the proud one. Some things don't change. They talked for hours about the old neighborhood, about Vincent's success, about the choices that led to this moment. I'm concerned about you, Vincent, Father Miguel said finally. Not about your business or your money. About your soul. My soul is fine, Father. Is it? Tell me, what have you gained from your revenge? Vincent considered the question carefully. Justice. Protection. The certainty that no one will try to destroy me again. And what have you lost? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Trust. The ability to believe in people. Maybe the ability to love. Those are expensive prices to pay for justice. They're necessary prices to pay for survival. Father Miguel leaned forward. Vincent, I baptized you. I watched you grow up in streets where trust could get you killed. But I also watched you become something more than your environment. Don't let three people's betrayal turn you back in what you fought to leave behind. And what was that? A man who trusts no one, loves nothing, and dies alone. After Father Miguel left, Vincent sat in his office thinking about those words. He'd achieved everything he'd set out to achieve. His enemies were defeated, his empire was secure, his reputation was intact. But as he looked out at the city lights, Vincent realized that Father Miguel was right about one thing. He was alone in a way he'd never been before. Not just physically alone, but emotionally isolated in a fortress of his own construction. The question was whether that fortress was protection or a prison. Vincent Calloway had destroyed everyone who betrayed him. He'd proven that crossing him carried a price too high for anyone to pay. He'd secured his empire and his future. But in the quiet of his empty house, surrounded by the success he'd fought so hard to protect, Vincent had to wonder if winning had been worth what it cost. The war was over. Vincent had won completely and utterly. But victory, he was learning, could be its own kind of defeat. Epilogue. 5 years later, Vincent Calloway stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Calloway Foundation's first homeless shelter. The foundation was his latest project, using his wealth to help people who had lost everything, the way he once might have if not for his own ruthless determination to succeed. In the crowd, he noticed a familiar face, Father Miguel, now grayer but still carrying himself with the same quiet strength. After the ceremony, they spoke again. You've changed, Father Miguel observed. Have I? The Vincent I knew 5 years ago would never have done something like this. Vincent considered that. It was true. In the years since the divorce, he'd gradually found his way back to something resembling humanity. Not the naive trust he'd once possessed, but a more measured form of connection with the world. Maybe I learned that there's more than one way to be strong, and more than one way to win. Vincent nodded. He'd never remarried, never again trusted someone completely with his heart, but he'd found purpose in using his resources to help others, satisfaction in building something that would outlast his own life. Claire, Bradley, and Denise had faded into memory, cautionary tales he occasionally thought about but no longer actively monitored. They'd paid their prices and disappeared into whatever lives awaited people who'd thrown away everything for petty revenge. Vincent Calloway had won the war completely, but more importantly, he'd survived it with his humanity intact. That perhaps was the greatest victory. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Architect. Curtis Lamb had built empires for molecules. At 34, he stood in the sterile white corridors of Helix Biosolutions, watching technicians handle his creation with a reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. The bacterial strain, designation HX7, glowed faintly blue under UV light, pulsing with engineered life. It was beautiful. It was revolutionary. It was his. Dr. Lamb, a young researcher, Ton Bird, approached nervously. The cascade sequence is showing those fluctuations again. Curtis nodded, already pulling up the data on his tablet. 7 years ago, he'd isolated an extremophile bacterium from a volcanic vent off the coast of Iceland. 3 years of genetic modification later, HX7 could produce complex pharmaceutical compounds at 1/10 the cost of traditional synthesis. Helix's stock had quadrupled. The company's flagship drug, entering phase 3 trials, would be worth billions. And only Curtis knew how to keep HX7 alive. The strain was temperamental, requiring specific environmental adjustments every 72 hours. A proprietary cascade sequence that Curtis had never fully documented. He meant to, but Gordon Campbell, the CFO and Curtis's father-in-law, had been too eager to rush production. Documentation could wait, Gordon had insisted. They needed to scale up first, satisfy the investors, prepare for the IPO. Curtis had protested. He demanded proper protocols, full documentation, a team trained in HX7 maintenance. Gordon had smiled as politicians smile and said, "You're too valuable to waste time teaching others, son. Just keep doing what you do best." That was 3 years ago. Adjust the pH down 0.03 units, Curtis instructed Ton, and increase the nitrogen feed by 2%. Monitor for 6 hours. Yes, sir. Curtis watched Ton work for a moment, then headed toward his office. The building's executive floor gleamed with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay. Helix occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown skyscraper, a monument to biotech success. Gordon's office dominated the corner, twice the size of anyone else's. Curtis's own office was modest but positioned strategically between the executive suite and the research labs. He designed it that way, close enough to oversee HX7, far enough from Gordon's suffocating presence. His wife, Christy Campbell, was waiting inside. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Christy was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful, polished, maintained, intimidating. They'd met at Stanford, where Curtis had been finishing his PhD and Christy was getting her MBA. She'd been charming then, interested in his research, supportive of his obsessive work hours. The daughter of a successful executive, she understood ambition. The marriage had been strategic on both sides, Curtis realized now. She'd wanted a brilliant husband to display at cocktail parties. Gordon had wanted Curtis's genius locked into the family business. "Your brother screwed up again," Curtis said, not looking up from his computer. Christie's jaw tightened. Dale Campbell, Gordon's son from his first marriage, was Helix's VP of Research Development, a title that meant nothing given his incompetence. Dale was 36, handsome in a soft-jawed way, and utterly convinced of his own brilliance despite evidence to the contrary. Dale said you sabotaged his presentation. Curtis finally looked at her. Dale's presentation was wrong. The efficacy numbers he cited don't exist. I corrected him before he embarrassed himself in front of the FDA. He says you humiliated him. He humiliated himself by not doing basic fact-checking. Christy crossed her arms. My father wants you to apologize. For what? Preventing Dale from committing fraud. Don't be dramatic. Dale made a mistake. Dale makes a lot of mistakes. Curtis pulled up a folder on his screen. In the last 6 months, he's misreported data 4 times, approved contaminated samples twice, and bypassed safety protocols that could have killed someone. I've covered for him every time because Gordon asked me to. Because he's family. No, Christy. Because your father is terrified that if Dale's incompetence becomes public, it'll affect the IPO. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. Curtis, we're 3 months from going public. 3 months from being worth $500 million. Can you please just play nice with Dale until then? Curtis studied his wife's face, searching for any sign of the woman he'd married. He found only calculation. What did Dale tell Gordon? Christy hesitated. That you're trying to undermine him. That you're jealous of his position. Curtis laughed, a short, bitter sound. Dale has a position because Gordon gave it to him. I have a position because I'm the only person on earth who can do what I do. Don't be arrogant. It's not arrogance when it's true. Christy left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Curtis returned to his work, but his mind churned with unease. The situation with Dale had been escalating for months. Gordon's protection of his incompetent son was becoming dangerous, not just to Curtis but to the entire company. Curtis pulled up a hidden directory on his secure server. 7 years of documentation. Every mistake Dale had made, every protocol Gordon had bypassed, every financial irregularity Curtis had noticed while maintaining the production systems. He'd been collecting it all, initially just as insurance. Now he wondered if insurance would be enough. Chapter 2. The Incident. The crisis came on a Thursday morning, exactly when Curtis had predicted it would. Dale Campbell had overridden the automated safety systems in Bioreactor 7, tried to increase production yields before the quarterly earnings call. Curtis discovered it during his routine morning check, staring at the screen in disbelief as temperature readings spiked into the danger zone. Curtis was already running toward the production floor. Emergency shutdown on BR-7. Authorization LAM Alpha 7. The young researcher's fingers flew across the keyboard. Sir, the override won't take. Someone locked it with executive clearance. Curtis's blood went cold. Executive clearance meant Gordon or Dale. He grabbed his phone, calling Dale directly. What? Dale's voice was irritated. BR-7 is critical. You need to release the executive lock now. I'm running an optimization protocol. The yields were too low. The protocol is killing HX7, the thermal stress alone. I know what I'm doing, Curtis. Maybe if you weren't so conservative with the parameters. Curtis hung up and called Gordon. No answer. He tried Christy. Voicemail. Manual override. Physically cut the power if you have to. But it was too late. Curtis watched the bioreactor's readings cascade into failure. The bacterial colony, stressed beyond tolerance, began producing toxic compounds instead of the intended pharmaceutical. In 12 seconds, $30 million worth of product became hazardous waste. The alarms were still blaring when Dale appeared, face red with fury. What did you do? Dale shouted over the noise. Curtis stared at him, genuinely speechless. What did I? You overrode the safety protocols. I was improving the yield. You shut it down out of spite. I tried to shut it down to save the culture. You locked me out. Other researchers had gathered, watching the confrontation. Ton stood frozen, still holding the emergency shutdown tablet. Dale stepped closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You've been sabotaging me since day one. You can't stand that I have authority here. Well, guess what? My father owns this company, and you're just an employee. Curtis felt something break inside him. Not anger, but clarity. He'd been protecting these people, shielding them from the consequences of their own incompetence. And this was the gratitude he received. Dale, Curtis said quietly, you just destroyed a $30 million culture because you don't understand basic bioreactor dynamics. That's not sabotage. That's natural selection. Dale's fist came fast, catching Curtis on the cheekbone. Curtis stumbled back, more from surprise than force. The lab went silent. Ton gasped. Someone yelled for security. Curtis touched his face, felt blood. He looked at Dale, who was breathing hard, fists still clenched. Feel better? Curtis asked. You're done, Dale spat. I'm telling my father everything. About your insubordination, your sabotage, your jealousy. You'll be lucky if we don't sue you. Curtis nodded slowly. Okay. The simplicity of the response seemed to confuse Dale. He'd expected anger, defensiveness, fear. Instead, Curtis simply walked to his office, closed the door, and began making copies of 7 years of carefully organized files. By noon, Gordon Campbell had summoned him to the executive floor. Gordon's office was decorated with symbols of success, awards, photos with politicians, a view that cost 6 figures per square foot. The CFO sat behind his mahogany desk like a king granting audience. Curtis. Gordon's tone was disappointed father, not businessman. What happened today is unacceptable. I agree. Dale's override of the safety systems. I'm talking about your attitude. Gordon leaned back in his chair. Dale came to me in tears. Said you've been undermining him for months, and when he tried to innovate, you shut him down and humiliated him. Curtis felt his jaw clench. That's not what happened. No, because there are a dozen witnesses who saw you argue with him, saw you shut down his optimization protocol, saw him defend himself. He punched me, Gordon, after you insulted him publicly. Gordon waved his hand dismissively. Dale's passionate about this company. Maybe he overreacted, but you pushed him to it. Curtis stared at his father-in-law, understanding fully for the first time how this would go. Dale's version was the version that would stand, because Dale was family and Curtis, for all his genius, was not. I want a formal apology, Gordon continued. Tomorrow, at the all-hands meeting, you'll apologize to Dale publicly for your behavior and commit to being a better team player. No. Gordon's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. I won't apologize for preventing disaster. Dale's override destroyed $30 million in product and could have produced toxic compounds that would have contaminated the entire production floor. If you want to punish someone, punish him. You're letting your ego. This isn't ego, Gordon. This is basic safety and competence. Dale is a liability, and you protecting him is going to destroy this company. The room went cold. Gordon stood slowly, his face hardening into something ugly. You forget your place, Curtis. I gave you this opportunity. I welcomed you in my family. And this is how you repay me? By insulting my son? I'm stating facts. You're being insubordinate. Gordon's voice rose. And unless you want to lose everything, your position, your reputation, your marriage, you'll do what I say. Curtis felt strangely calm. He'd known this moment would come eventually. Gordon was a man who saw the world in terms of control and submission. Curtis had been useful, so he'd been tolerated. But the moment he challenged the family hierarchy, he became expendable. I'll think about it, Curtis said finally. You'll do more than think. Tomorrow, all-hands meeting, 9 a.m. Be ready to apologize and grovel if necessary. Or you're off the project until you do. Curtis nodded and left, his mind already working through calculations. Not scientific ones this time. Personal ones. Chapter 3. The Declaration. The all-hands meeting took place in Helix's main conference center, a room designed to hold 300 people comfortably. Today it was packed, standing room only. Word had spread about yesterday's confrontation. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Curtis arrived exactly at 9, wearing his usual lab coat over dark jeans and a button-down shirt. He looked calm, almost serene. Dale sat in the front row, wearing a designer suit and a smug expression. Christie sat beside him, avoiding Curtis's gaze. Gordon stood at the podium, his presence commanding attention. Thank you all for coming, Gordon began. We're here today to address an incident that occurred yesterday. As many of you know, there was a confrontation between Dr. Curtis Lamb and Dale Campbell, our VP of Research Development. The room was silent, electric with anticipation. I want to be clear about our company values, Gordon continued. At Helix, we're family. We support each other, lift each other up, and resolve conflicts professionally. What happened yesterday fell short of that standard. Curtis stood against the back wall, watching Gordon perform. Curtis Lamb has made significant contributions to this company. His work on HX7 has been valuable. However, his behavior toward Dale, his insubordination, his public disrespect, cannot be tolerated. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded along. Curtis saw Ton Bird in the middle of the room, looking distressed. Therefore, Gordon's voice rose with authority. Until Curtis Lamb offers a sincere public apology to my son, he is removed from the HX7 project and all critical research initiatives. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Removing Curtis from HX7 was like removing a heart surgeon mid-operation. Gordon's eyes found Curtis in the back. Curtis, would you like to say something? The room turned as one, 300 pairs of eyes locking onto him. Curtis felt the weight of the moment, the expectation of humiliation. Gordon wanted him broken, apologizing, submitting to the family hierarchy. Curtis pushed off the wall and walked down the center aisle, his footsteps loud in the silence. People parted for him. He reached the front, turned to face the crowd, and smiled. "Okay," he said simply. Gordon blinked. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I accept your decision." The confusion on Gordon's face was almost comical. This wasn't in the script. Curtis was supposed to argue, defend himself, maybe even apologize. Instead, he just agreed. "So, you'll apologize?" Dale called out, unable to hide his excitement. Curtis turned to look at him. "No, I accept being removed from the project." The room erupted in whispers. Gordon held up his hand for silence. "Curtis, think carefully about what you're doing. Without the HX7 project, you have no position here. I understand. This is your career, your reputation. I'm aware." Gordon's jaw clenched. He played his power card, and Curtis had simply folded. It felt wrong, anticlimactic. But what could Gordon do? He'd made his ultimatum public. He had to follow through. "Fine," Gordon said coldly. "Security will escort you to collect your personal items. You're restricted from all labs and production facilities immediately." Curtis nodded and turned to leave. As he passed Tom Bird, he paused. "The cascade sequence needs adjustment in 68 hours, he said quietly. "You have my notes." Tom looked terrified. "Dr. Lamb, I don't know how. You'll figure it out." Curtis kept walking. The crowd parted again, and Curtis returned to the back of the room. 2 security guards were already waiting. He went with them peacefully, leaving 300 people stunned in his wake. The next morning, Curtis arrived at Helix at 7 a.m. The security guards recognized him and waved him through. His badge still worked. He went directly to his office, pulled out 3 cardboard boxes, and began packing. 7 years of his life fit into 3 boxes. Books, a few personal photos, his collection of geological samples from Iceland. He left the diplomas on the wall. Let them remember what they'd lost. Gordon appeared in the doorway at 8:30, earlier than his usual 10 a.m. arrival. He looked smug, satisfied with himself. "Learned your lesson?" Gordon asked, leaning against the doorframe. Curtis carefully placed a framed photo of DNA helixes into the last box. "I learned a lot working here, Gordon. Thank you for that. Ready to apologize now?" "Dale's willing to be gracious if you are." Curtis sealed the box with tape, then pulled out an envelope from his desk drawer. His resignation letter, written last night, formal and final. "I won't be apologizing," Curtis said, handing Gordon the envelope. "I'm resigning, effective immediately." Gordon's smug expression faltered. He opened the envelope, scanned the letter, and his face went pale. "You can't resign. You're under contract. My contract has a termination clause. I'm exercising it. I have to give 30 days notice, but since you removed me from all projects yesterday, I assume I'll be spending those 30 days at home." "Curtis, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. I'm done." Gordon's voice hardened. "You realize you can't work in this field again? I'll make sure of it." And Christy. Christy chose her side yesterday when she sat next to Dale. Gordon stepped into the office, closing the door. His businessman facade cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. "Curtis, be reasonable. The IPO is in 3 months. We need you until then. After that, you can name your price. Triple your salary, equity, whatever you want. I don't want anything from you. HX7 needs maintenance. The cascade sequence is documented in my notes. Train someone else. No one else can." Gordon stopped, realization dawning. "You're the only one who knows how." Curtis picked up his boxes. "That was your decision, not mine. I tried to train a team. You said it was a waste of time. You wanted to keep me essential, keep me trapped. Congratulations. You succeeded until you didn't." He moved toward the door. Gordon didn't move. "Curtis, please, think about what you're doing. You're not just hurting me, you're hurting Christy, everyone who works here." "I am thinking, Gordon. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly." He pushed past his father-in-law and headed toward the elevator. Behind him, he heard Gordon's phone ring, heard the CFO answer it with forced cheerfulness. Curtis was waiting for the elevator when he heard the shout. "Where is he?" "Burton Perkins, Helix's chief counsel, came running down the hallway, his face ashen. He was a small man, usually composed, but now he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Mr. Campbell." "Sir, tell me you didn't let him resign." Gordon emerged from Curtis's office, confused. "What? He just—" Burton grabbed the resignation letter from Gordon's hand, read it, and made a sound like a wounded animal. "Oh, God. Oh, no. Sir, tell me you didn't. Tell me you didn't. What are you talking about?" Burton looked at Curtis, who was calmly waiting for the elevator, then back at Gordon. "His contract, sir. Did you read his contract?" "Of course I read it. He helped draft it. But it's standard." "It's not standard." Burton's voice cracked. "Dr. Lamb's contract includes exclusive licensing for HX7. If he resigns, the license terminates. The bacterial strain, all the modifications, the production protocols, they're all his intellectual property. We only had rights while he was employed here." The color drained from Gordon's face. "That's not. We own HX7. The company developed it." "He developed it. Here, yes, but the original isolation was his personal research. We licensed it from him, conditional on his employment. I flagged this 7 years ago, but you said he'd never leave, that he was family." Curtis's elevator arrived. He stepped in, turned to face the hallway, and pressed the button for the lobby. Gordon stood frozen, the resignation letter crumpling in his fist. Burton was frantically scrolling through his phone, probably pulling up contract files. Other executives had emerged from their offices, drawn by the commotion. As the elevator doors began to close, Curtis spoke one last time. "You wanted me to learn my lesson, Gordon. Consider it learned." The doors shut on Gordon Campbell's face, a face that had just realized what Curtis had known all along. At Helix Biosolutions, Curtis Lamb wasn't an employee. He was the foundation. And foundations, once removed, bring everything down. Chapter 4. The Unraveling. Curtis spent his first day of freedom reorganizing his home office in his Pacific Heights apartment, the apartment he'd bought before marrying Christy, kept in his name alone. Smart move, in retrospect. His phone rang 47 times. He ignored all of them. Christy came home at 9 p.m., slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Curtis was at his computer, reviewing job offers from 3 competitors who'd somehow already heard about his resignation. "What have you done?" Christy's voice was ice and fury. Curtis swiveled his chair to face her. "I resigned. You were there. You destroyed everything. The IPO, my father's reputation, our future." "Your future," Curtis corrected. "This was never our future, Christy. This was your father's future, and you were happy to sacrifice me to protect it." She grabbed her phone, thrust it in his face. The screen showed a Bloomberg headline. Helix Biosolutions in crisis as lead scientist resigns weeks before major clinical trial. The stock dropped 18% today, Christy hissed. 18%. Investors are panicking. My father has been in emergency meetings all day. I'm sure he has. You did this on purpose. You planned this. Curtis stood, moving past her to the kitchen. I plan to do good work and be treated with respect. Your family had other plans. Christy followed him, her heels clicking on the hardwood. You're being petty. Dale made a mistake, and you're punishing everyone for it. Dale's mistake cost the company $30 million. I prevented it from being worse. And your father backed Dale, threatened me, and publicly humiliated me. So yes, I left. You could have stayed. You could have apologized, played along for 3 more months. And then what? Your father keeps Dale in power, I keep cleaning up his messes, and we all pretend everything's fine. Curtis pulled a beer from the fridge. No thanks. Christy's mask slipped, revealing desperation. Curtis, please. Come back. Name your terms. My father will agree to anything. Anything except hold Dale accountable. Dale's his son, and I'm your husband. But that didn't stop you from sitting next to him at the meeting. Christy's face hardened. This marriage is over. I know, Curtis said quietly. I'll have my lawyer send the papers. She stared at him, seeming to realize he meant it. You'll get nothing in the divorce. My father will make sure of that. I don't want anything from you or your father. Keep it all. Curtis took a drink. I just want to be free of the Campbell family. Christie left without another word. Curtis finished his beer alone, then returned to his computer and accepted the job offer from Meridian Biotech, Helix's biggest competitor. They'd offered him double his previous salary, full research autonomy, and a percentage of any patents he developed. The contract was signed by midnight. At Helix Biosolutions, the crisis was escalating faster than anyone had predicted. Ton Bird stood in the production facility at 3 a.m., staring at bioreactor readings that made no sense. The HX7 culture was degrading, slowly but measurably. The cascade sequence was due in 18 hours, and Curtis's notes, extensive as they were, read like instructions written in a foreign language. "Try increasing the nitrogen feed," Dale Campbell suggested, standing behind him with his arms crossed. Dr. Lamb's notes say that destabilizes the culture during the preliminary phase, Ton replied nervously. Dr. Lamb isn't here anymore, and my way makes more sense. Tom wanted to scream. Dale's way had destroyed BR7, but Dale was VP of Research Development, and Tom was a junior researcher who wanted to keep his job. Yes, sir, Ton said, making the adjustment. 30 minutes later, the degradation accelerated. Gordon Campbell convened an emergency board meeting at 6 a.m. Friday morning. The board members arrived grim-faced, having seen the stock price and the media coverage. Gentlemen, ladies, Gordon began, his politician's smile firmly in place. We're facing a temporary setback, but temporary? Lawrence Rosario, the board chairman and a ruthless venture capitalist, cut him off. Gordon, your lead scientist just quit. The scientist who created your only viable product. That's not temporary. That's catastrophic. We have his notes. We have a team. His team doesn't know what they're doing. This from Marlon Peters, the board's technical advisor and a biotech veteran. I've been reviewing the situation. Curtis Lamb didn't just create HX7. He is HX7. The strain requires constant adjustment, and he never fully documented his maintenance protocols. He was supposed to document everything. Gordon protested. You never gave him time. Marlon shot back. You pushed for rapid scaling, rush production, prioritize the IPO timeline over proper scientific protocols. And now you're paying the price. Walter Thompson, representing the largest investor group, leaned forward. What's the plan to fix this? Gordon straightened. We're in negotiations to bring Dr. Lamb back. He's upset about the situation with my son, but I'm confident we can reach an arrangement. What situation with your son? Lawrence's eyes narrowed. The room went quiet. Gordon realized his mistake too late. There was a minor disagreement, Gordon hedged. Disagreement about what? Burton Perkins, the lawyer, cleared his throat miserably. Mr. Campbell's son, Dale, who is VP of Research Development, had an altercation with Dr. Lamb that resulted in property damage and assault. The board members exchanged glances. Assault, Lawrence repeated flatly. Dale was provoked. Gordon, Walter interrupted, his voice dangerous. Please tell me you didn't force your lead scientist to apologize to your son after your son assaulted him. Gordon's silence was answer enough. Lawrence stood abruptly. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. Gordon, you're suspended pending investigation. Burton, you're interim CFO. Your first priority is getting Curtis Lamb back, whatever it takes. Your second priority is firing Dale Campbell. You can't fire my son. Watch me. Lawrence looked around the table. All in favor? Every hand went up. Chapter 5. The Cascade Failure. Curtis received the call from Burton Perkins at noon on Saturday. Dr. Lamb, please. The board is offering you a new contract. Full autonomy. Dale Campbell has been terminated. Gordon is suspended. No, Curtis said, sitting in a coffee shop in North Beach, enjoying his first peaceful weekend in years. Dr. Lamb, please, just listen to the offer. Burton, I signed with Meridian yesterday. I start Monday. Silence on the other end. Then you what? Meridian Biotech. They're letting me build my own research division. Clean slate, full funding, no incompetent executives' kids to babysit. You can't. Your non-compete clause applies to trade secrets, not general expertise. I'm not taking HX7 with me. That stays with Helix for whatever it's worth. Dr. Lamb, HX7 is dying. The culture is degrading. We're 36 hours from critical failure. Curtis took a sip of his coffee. Have you tried following my notes? Your team doesn't understand them. Then hire someone who does. There's no one who does. You're the only person on Earth. Burton stopped, hearing himself. That was your plan, wasn't it? You made yourself indispensable. No, Burton. Gordon made me indispensable. I tried to train people. He refused. He wanted me trapped, dependent on the company and the family. Now you're all learning what happens when you build your entire business model on one person's expertise and then treat that person like garbage. Curtis could hear Burton's breathing, rapid and panicked. Please, Burton said finally. I'm begging you. Come back for one day. Save the culture, train someone, anything. We'll pay you consulting fees. Name your price. $1 million per hour, minimum 4 hours. Burton choked. That's $4 million to save a billion-dollar company? Sounds like a bargain. Curtis stood, dropping money on the table for his coffee. But let's be honest, Burton. Gordon won't pay it. He's too proud. He'll think he can fix this himself, or blame me, or find some legal way to force me back. And by the time he realizes he can't, it'll be too late. Dr. Lamb. Good luck, Burton. You're going to need it. Curtis hung up and blocked the number. By Sunday evening, HX7 was in free fall. The bacterial culture, stressed beyond recovery, had begun producing toxic compounds. The entire production facility had to be evacuated and sterilized. 7 years of careful cultivation died in 18 hours. Ton Bird sat in the empty lab, staring at dead cells under a microscope, and cried. He'd tried everything in Curtis's notes. He called in experts from Stanford and Berkeley. Nothing worked. The strain was gone. Dale Campbell had also been crying, though for different reasons. His termination had come with a humiliating exit interview where the board's investigators presented evidence of his incompetence. Dozens of incidents, all documented by Curtis over the years. Dale wasn't just fired, he was unhireable in the industry. Christy Campbell filed for divorce Sunday night, citing irreconcilable differences. Her lawyer had advised against it, given Curtis's growing reputation as the biotech genius who'd escaped the toxic Campbell family. Public sentiment was on Curtis's side, but Christy was furious and wanted revenge, even if it cost her. And Gordon Campbell sat in his home office, watching his empire crumble, and finally understood what he'd lost. Monday morning, Curtis walked into Meridian Biotech's headquarters in South San Francisco. The building was smaller than Helix, less ostentatious, but the lab spaces were state-of-the-art. Keenan Hull, Meridian CEO, met him personally. Dr. Lamb, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to getting started. Keenan handed him a tablet. We've already set up your lab space. Your team is being assembled. I'm giving you full hiring authority. And I wanted you to see this. Curtis looked at the tablet. It showed a news article. Helix Biosolutions faces criminal investigation as HX7 production fails. Criminal? Curtis looked up, surprised. The FDA is investigating. Apparently, Helix rushed several safety approvals and possibly falsified some clinical trial data. Your departure triggered regulatory scrutiny, and what they found. Keenan shook his head. Gordon Campbell is looking at serious prison time. Curtis felt a cold shock. He documented Dale's safety violations, but he hadn't realized how deep the corruption went. Gordon must have been covering for Dale for years, falsifying reports, bribing inspectors. I had no idea, Curtis said honestly. We know. The investigation makes that clear. You were the only one maintaining proper protocols. Once you left, everything fell apart. Keenan clapped him on the shoulder. You're a hero in the industry right now. The scientist who refused to compromise his ethics, even at personal cost. Curtis thought about that. Hero felt wrong. He just wanted to be respected, to do good work. But the Campbell family had made that impossible. Come on, Keenan said. Let me show you your new kingdom. As they walked through Meridian's gleaming corridors, Curtis felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The full scope of the disaster emerged over the next 2 weeks. The FDA's investigation revealed that Gordon Campbell had been systematically covering up Dale's mistakes for years. Contaminated samples marked as clean. Efficacy numbers inflated by 15 to 20%. Safety protocols ignored or falsified. All to maintain the appearance of success and keep the IPO on track. But the real bombshell came from an unexpected source. Marquis Liu, Helix's head of IT security. Marquis had worked at Helix for 5 years, quietly maintaining servers and security systems. He was invisible, exactly as IT people often are, until they're not. On a Wednesday morning, Marquis walked into the FBI's San Francisco field office and handed them a hard drive. "I've been documenting everything," he said simply. The hard drive contained 5 years of emails, financial records, and recorded conversations. Marquis had been suspicious of Gordon's activities for years and had been collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment. That moment was now. The evidence painted a devastating picture. Gordon Campbell had been embezzling company funds, funneling money through fake consulting contracts and inflated supplier invoices. Over $12 million over 6 years. Dale Campbell had sexually harassed 3 female employees. Gordon had paid them off with company money and forced them to sign NDAs. One victim, Adela McKnight, had been a rising star in biochemistry before Dale's behavior drove her from the field entirely. Gordon had been engaging in insider trading, using knowledge of company developments to make strategic stock purchases through offshore accounts. Most damning, Gordon had known HX7 was unstable. Curtis had warned him repeatedly, sent him technical briefings explaining the risks. Gordon had ignored every warning because acknowledging the problem would have delayed the IPO. The FBI arrested Gordon Campbell on Thursday morning. The perp walk was filmed. Gordon in handcuffs, looking decades older, being led into a federal building while reporters shouted questions. Christy Campbell tried to distance herself, claiming ignorance. But emails revealed she'd known about the harassment payments, had helped her father hide assets. She was named as a co-conspirator. Dale Campbell fled to Mexico, was extradited within a week, and immediately tried to cut a deal by blaming everything on his father. Curtis heard about the arrest while working in his new lab at Meridian. Ton Bird, who'd followed Curtis to the new company, brought him the news. "Dr. Lamb, have you seen this?" Ton held up his phone, showing the perp walk video. Curtis watched in silence. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just tired sadness. "I knew Gordon was corrupt," Curtis said quietly. "I documented a lot of it, but I didn't realize how deep it went." "You could have exposed him years ago," Ton pointed out. "Maybe, but exposing Gordon would have destroyed Helix, and there were good people working there. People like you." Curtis returned to his microscope. "I hoped he'd retire, or the board would figure it out. I was naive." "You weren't naive. You were optimistic." Ton sat down. "Dr. Lamb, there's something else. Adela McKnight, one of the women Dale harassed, she's been trying to contact you." Curtis looked up. "What?" "She wants to thank you. She says your resignation gave her the courage to come forward. The FBI approached her after you left, and she told them everything." Curtis felt something crack in his chest, not breaking but opening. He thought he was just saving himself when he resigned. He hadn't realized he might be saving others too. "Give me your contact information," Curtis said. "I'd like to talk to her." Chapter 7. The Trial. The trial of Gordon Campbell became a media sensation. Federal prosecutors charged him with wire fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, securities fraud, and conspiracy. Christie faced reduced charges in exchange for testimony against her father. Dale, true to form, blamed Gordon for everything and claimed he'd been manipulated. Curtis was subpoenaed as a witness. He testified for 3 days in late January, explaining the science, the protocols, and Gordon's systematic ignoring of safety concerns. On the stand, Curtis was calm and precise. He presented documentation dating back 7 years. Every warning he'd given, every corner Gordon had cut, every time Dale's incompetence had been covered up at Curtis's expense. The defense attorney, a slick corporate lawyer named Todd McMillan, tried to paint Curtis as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. "Isn't it true, Dr. Lamb, that you were jealous of Dale Campbell's position?" "No. You resented working under someone less qualified?" "I resented being forced to cover up incompetence that endangered people." Yet you never formally reported these concerns to the board. I reported them to Gordon Campbell, the CFO, and my direct superior. He ordered me to keep quiet. Todd pulled out an email. This email from Gordon states, "Curtis, I value your concerns, but Dale is learning. Please be patient." That hardly sounds like he was ordering you to stay silent. Curtis smiled slightly. That email is from March 2023. Let me read you an email from April. He pulled out his own folder. Gordon to me. Curtis, if you mention Dale's incident to anyone outside this company, I will destroy your career. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Family protects family. Should I keep reading? The courtroom went silent. Todd flipped through his papers, face reddening. No further questions. The prosecution called Adela McKnight to the stand. She was 38, a brilliant scientist who'd been forced out of her career by Dale's harassment. She testified about the assault, the hush money, Gordon's threats. He told me if I spoke out, he'd make sure I never worked in biotech again, Adela said, her voice steady despite the tears. And for 5 years, I believed him. Until Dr. Lamb showed me you could stand up to the Campbells and survive. Curtis sat in the gallery, watching her testimony. After she stepped down, she found him in the courthouse hallway. Thank you, Adela said simply. I didn't do anything. You quit. You walked away from everything because it was the right thing to do. Adela smiled. That's not nothing. That's heroic. Curtis shook his head. I just wanted to be treated with respect. Same thing, Adela replied. In a toxic system, demanding respect is revolutionary. They talked for an hour, comparing experiences with the Campbell family. Adela had joined a different biotech company and was slowly rebuilding her career. She'd also started an advocacy organization for women in STEM facing harassment. We're calling it the Lamb Initiative, Adela said, grinning at Curtis's embarrassed expression. In honor of the man who proved you don't have to tolerate abuse, no matter how powerful the abuser. I'm not comfortable being anyone's symbol, Curtis protested. Too late. You already are. Adela handed him a card. If you ever want to contribute or speak to the group, we'd love to have you. Curtis pocketed the card, unsure how to feel. He just wanted to escape. But apparently, his escape had inspired others. Chapter 8. The Verdict. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Gordon Campbell was found guilty on all counts. The judge, a stern woman named June Clark, delivered the sentence without emotion. Mr. Campbell, you abused your position of power to enrich yourself, protected a sexual predator, endangered public safety, and showed no remorse. I hereby sentence you to 18 years in federal prison, with restitution of $12 million to Helix Biosolutions and its investors. Gordon's face crumpled. He aged 20 years in 20 seconds. Christy Campbell received 3 years for conspiracy and obstruction. She cried throughout the sentencing, begging for mercy. The judge was unmoved. Dale Campbell got 8 years for fraud and sexual assault. His lawyer had argued Dale was manipulated by his father, but the victim's testimony destroyed that defense. Dale had been a predator, enabled by Gordon's power and money. Curtis watched the verdicts from the gallery, sitting next to Adela McKnight and Ton Bird. When the sentences were read, he felt only emptiness. Justice, yes, but so much damage had been done. The civil lawsuits came next. Helix Biosolutions filed bankruptcy within 3 months. Without HX7 and with its leadership in prison, the company was worthless. Investors lost hundreds of millions. Employees lost their jobs. Curtis felt guilty about that until Keenan Hull pointed out the obvious. Helix was built on fraud. It was going to collapse eventually. You just made it happen sooner, which saved investors from losing even more when the IPO went through. Meridian Biotech hired 42 former Helix employees, including Ton. Curtis personally interviewed each one, ensuring they were competent and ethical. No more Dale Campbells in his orbit. Curtis also negotiated to acquire HX7's remains, the dead bacterial cultures, and all associated intellectual property, from the bankruptcy estate for $1. The strain was unsalvageable, but the research might lead somewhere new. Why buy it if it's dead? Ton asked. Because it's mine, Curtis said simply. I created it. I should be the one to lay it to rest properly. The divorce from Christy was finalized in March. She got the house they'd shared. Curtis didn't want it anymore. He kept his original apartment, his savings, and his freedom. Christy tried one last manipulation during the settlement negotiations. Her lawyer claimed Curtis had been abusive, controlling, gaslit her throughout the marriage. Curtis's lawyer, a fierce woman named Rosie Cole, demolished the claims with documentation. Emails from Christy laughing at Curtis's concerns. Texts mocking him to her friends. Evidence she'd known about her father's crimes and done nothing. Your client is a liar and an accessory to fraud, Rosie told Christy's lawyer. My client wants nothing from her except to never see her again. Take the deal or we'll countersue for defamation. Christy took the deal. The last time Curtis saw his ex-wife was in the courthouse hallway after the final hearing. She looked hollow, defeated. I hope you're happy, Christy spat. Curtis considered the question honestly. I'm not happy, but I'm free, and that's better. Christy left without another word, her heels clicking away into a future of probation, community service, and a permanently tarnished reputation. Chapter 9. The Architect Rebuilds. 1 year later, Curtis stood in Meridian Biotech's expanded research campus, watching construction crews finish the new building. The facility would be named the Lamb Center for Ethical Biotechnology, much to Curtis's embarrassment, but Keenan had insisted. You represent something important, Keenan had argued. Integrity over profit. Science over ego. People need symbols like that. Curtis had reluctantly agreed, on one condition. The center would fund research for scientists who'd been pushed out of the industry by harassment or corruption. A chance for brilliant people like Adela McKnight to rebuild. The center's first fellows were announced in October, 12 scientists, all with horror stories about toxic workplaces and unethical bosses, all given full funding, autonomy, and support. Adela was one of them. She was working on a new approach to bacterial protein synthesis, building on Curtis's original HX7 research, but taking it in a different direction. It's brilliant, Curtis told her after reviewing her proposal. You might actually make HX7 look primitive. Adela grinned. That's the idea. Improve on the master's work. I'm not a master. I'm just a guy who got lucky and stubborn in equal measure. Same thing in science, Adela replied. Ton Bird had grown into an excellent researcher in his own right. Curtis promoted him to lead scientist on a new extremophile project, this time with full documentation and a trained team. No more single points of failure. Dr. Lamb, Ton said one evening as they reviewed data, do you ever regret how it all went down? Curtis thought about that. He'd lost 7 years of work, a marriage, and his faith in human decency. But he'd gained freedom, integrity, and the knowledge that he could walk away from anything that didn't serve him. No, Curtis said finally. I regret staying as long as I did. I should have left the moment Gordon started protecting Dale's incompetence. But then Helix would have collapsed sooner, and a lot of people would have been spared pain. Curtis closed his laptop. The Campbell family built an empire on exploitation and fraud. Someone needed to stop them. I'm just glad I finally had the courage to do it. Curtis's personal life improved slowly. He started dating again, cautiously, with plenty of therapy to work through his trust issues. He reconnected with old friends from graduate school, people he neglected while trapped in the Campbell orbit. He bought a cabin in Tahoe, spent weekends hiking and skiing, remembered what it felt like to enjoy life instead of just surviving it. And every few months, he received messages from scientists who'd left toxic workplaces, inspired by his story. Some asked for advice. Others just wanted to say thank you. Curtis replied to every message, because he remembered what it felt like to be trapped, to believe you had no choice, to think that suffering was the price of success. It wasn't. And if his story helped even one person realize that, it was worth it. In December, 2 years after his resignation, Curtis received an unexpected visitor at Meridian. Gordon Campbell Jr., Dale's younger half-brother, 26 years old, and someone Curtis had barely known during his Helix years, showed up at Curtis's office. Dr. Lamb, I'm sorry to bother you, Gordon Jr. said nervously. I know you have no reason to want to see me. Curtis studied the young man. He had Gordon Sr.'s features, but none of the arrogance. He looked genuinely miserable. What can I do for you? Curtis asked carefully. I wanted to apologize. For my family. For everything they did to you. Gordon Jr. twisted his hands. I know it doesn't change anything, but I wanted you to know that not all Campbells are like my father and Dale. I know, Curtis said gently. You're not responsible for their crimes. I worked at Helix during the trial. I saw the evidence, read your documentation. Gordon Jr. met Curtis's eyes. You tried to stop them. You tried to protect people. And they destroyed you for it. They tried to destroy me, Curtis corrected. They failed. Gordon Jr. smiled weakly. Yeah, they did. He pulled out an envelope. This is from a victim's fund. My father's restitution money. They're distributing it to people who were harmed. You're entitled to a payment for emotional damages and lost wages. Curtis took the envelope, looked inside. A check for $250,000. I don't want Gordon's money, Curtis said, handing it back. It's not his anymore. It's yours. You earned it. Gordon Jr. pushed the envelope back. Use it for your research. Donate it. Burn it. But take it. You deserve compensation for what you went through. Curtis considered, then nodded. I'll donate it to the Lamb Initiative. Help other people escape situations like mine. Perfect. Gordon Jr. stood to leave, then paused. Dr. Lamb, thank you for showing me it's possible to stand up to powerful people and survive. I left the biotech industry because of my family's reputation, but I'm going back, starting fresh. And I'm going to do it right this time. Curtis shook the young man's hand. Good luck, Gordon. I hope you succeed. After he left, Curtis sat alone in his office, looking at the check. $250,000. Blood money from Gordon Campbell's fraud. He called Adela McKnight. I have a donation for the initiative, Curtis said, and a story about how even the children of monsters can choose to be better. 3 years after his resignation, Curtis Lamb stood on stage at a biotech conference in Boston, accepting the Kavli Prize for Innovative Research. His new bacterial strain, Meridian 1, developed with Adela McKnight and Ton Bird, was revolutionizing pharmaceutical production. Safer, more stable, and fully documented so anyone could maintain it. This award isn't just mine, Curtis said in his acceptance speech. It belongs to every scientist who's been told to compromise their ethics for profit, every researcher who's been harassed or exploited, every brilliant mind that was pushed out of this field by toxic leadership. He paused, looking out at the audience. He saw Adela in the third row, beaming. Tom beside her, Keenan Hull giving a thumbs up, and in the back, Gordon Campbell Jr., who'd become a successful researcher at a small, ethical startup. The Campbell family tried to break me, Curtis continued. They tried to make me believe I was nothing without them, that I should be grateful for their exploitation. They were wrong. And every day I show up to my lab, collaborate with brilliant colleagues, and do work I'm proud of, I prove them wrong again. The audience applauded. Curtis accepted the crystal trophy, felt its weight. This was real. This was earned. Not through intimidation or fraud or nepotism. Through talent, integrity, and the courage to walk away from anything less than respect. Thank you, Curtis finished. And to anyone out there in a toxic situation, wondering if they should stay or go, leave. It's terrifying. It's hard. But on the other side is freedom. And freedom, I promise you, is worth everything. The applause was deafening. Curtis Lamb, the man who'd walked away from everything, had built something better. And this time, no one could take it away. Epilogue. 5 years later. Gordon Campbell died in federal prison from a heart attack. The obituaries were brief and unflattering. Dale Campbell was released after 6 years for good behavior, tried to rebuild his life, and ended up working a minimum wage job after every biotech company rejected him. Christy Campbell remarried, a much older man, rich and controlling. She seemed, from Curtis's perspective, to have learned nothing. Gordon Campbell Jr. became a successful researcher and named his first daughter Ada, after Adela McKnight, who'd shown him what ethical science looked like. Curtis never remarried. He dated occasionally, enjoyed his freedom, and poured his energy into research and mentorship. The Lamb Center produced breakthrough after breakthrough, all conducted with rigorous ethics and transparent protocols. On the 10-year